I was standing in the hallway with a basket of folded laundry pressed against my hip when I heard my own brother explain to 3,000 strangers why I didn't matter. He was recording in the studio, which was actually the formal dining room of our childhood home in Pittsburgh, the one I had paid to soundproof 3 months ago. The Red's all-air light he had bought from Amazon was glowing above the doorframe. Usually I just walked past on my tiptoes, terrified of ruining his audio quality and triggering a meltdown. But that night, the door was cracked open just an inch to let the heat out, and his voice drifted into the hallway, crisp, confident, and utterly delusional. "See, that's the trap most guys fall into," Caleb was saying. He had that smooth, manufactured baritone he only used when the microphone was on. "You feel guilty cutting off the dead weight, but you have to look at family like a business. You have assets and you have liabilities, and let's be real, some people in this world are just designed to be fuel. They don't have the vision. They exist to keep the engine running for the alphas who actually drive the car." His co-host, a guy named Trent, who wore sunglasses indoors and vaped constantly, laughed. "Like your sister, the nurse, physical therapist assistant," Caleb corrected. But he said it with a sneer, like it was a dirty word. "But yeah, exactly like Elena. She's a worker bee. Good heart, weak mind. She's happy scrubbing floors and paying bills because it gives her small life meaning. If I didn't let her take care of things, she'd probably fall apart. I'm doing her a favor by letting her support the vision. I'm giving her purpose." I stood frozen on the hardwood. The laundry basket felt like it weighed 500 pounds. It wasn't just the cruelty that stopped me. It was the laughter. My mother was in the room with them. I could hear the distinct clink of her charm bracelet against the glass. She was sitting in there listening to her 28-year-old son call her 26-year-old daughter fuel and dead weight, and she was laughing. "She really does love to be needed," my mother chimed in, her voice sounding tinny through the studio equipment. "It's her love language, sweetie. Some people just are built for the spotlight. Elena likes the background." I looked down at the shirt on top of the laundry pile. It was Caleb's. I had washed it, dried it, and folded it because he claimed he was too busy building an empire to handle domestic chores. I looked at the hallway floor I had Swiffered that morning before my 12-hour shift. I thought about the bank notification on my phone from 3 days ago. Auto draft complete. Mortgage. $2,400. I didn't storm in. I didn't kick the door open and scream that the visionary couldn't even pay for his own Spotify subscription. I didn't throw the laundry basket. Instead, I felt a strange, cold click in the center of my chest. It was the sound of a heavy door locking for the last time. I set the basket down gently outside the door, turned around, and walked silently back to my room. If you've ever been the one expected to fix everything, you know that silence isn't always peace. Sometimes, it's just the sound of a fuse burning down. To understand why I didn't walk out that very night, you have to understand the ecosystem of the Vance family. We were a delicately balanced structure, built entirely on grief and delusion. And for 6 years, I had been the load-bearing wall. It started when I was 20. My dad, a quiet man who worked in logistics and kept the peace, died of a sudden heart attack while shoveling snow in the driveway. He was the only thing anchoring my mother, Sarah, to reality. When he died, she didn't just grieve, she dissolved. She retired early from her administrative job, claiming her nerves couldn't handle the stress, and retreated into a world of daytime television and vague, undiagnosed ailments that flared up whenever a bill needed to be paid. Caleb was 22 then, freshly graduated with a marketing degree he deemed too theoretical to use. He was going to be an entrepreneur, a disruptor. He had a lot of words like that. Dad had always been strict with Caleb, pushing him to get a steady job. But with Dad gone, Mom turned Caleb into the man of the house. But being the man of the house didn't mean working. It meant dreaming. I was the one who dropped out of my 4-year university program to move back home. I was the one who enrolled in a 2-year physical therapist assistant program at the community college because it was the fastest route to a decent paycheck. I was the one who sat down with the life insurance payout and tried to explain to my mother that $200,000 wasn't infinite. Don't bore me with math, Elena. She had sighed, waving a hand at me from the sofa. Your father always handled the numbers. It gives me a migraine. Just make sure the lights stay on. So I did. For 6 years, I worked. And I don't mean I sat at a desk. I worked in high-volume rehab centers, lifting stroke patients who couldn't stand, massaging knotted muscles until my thumbs cramped, helping car accident victims learn to walk again. It was grueling, sweaty, physical labor. I came home, smelling like antiseptic and icy hot, my back aching, my feet swollen. And every 2 weeks, my paycheck went into the joint account I shared with Mom. The dynamic settled in slowly, like mold growing behind wallpaper. At first, it was, Elena, can you cover the electric bill this month? The insurance check hasn't cleared. Then it was, Elena, Caleb needs a new laptop for his business. It's an investment for all of us. Then it was simply assumed. By the time I was 26, I was paying the mortgage, the utilities, the grocery bill, and the premiums on Mom's supplemental health insurance. I was paying for the high-speed fiber internet Caleb needed for his streaming. I was paying for the lease on the SUV Mom drove to her bridge club. And what was I getting in return? I was getting told I was limited. That was their favorite word for me. Limited. Elena is so practical, Mom would say to her friends, patting my hand with a pitying smile. She doesn't have Caleb's fire. She likes her little routine. She likes being a helper. They viewed my job not as a medical career, but as manual labor. To them, I was essentially a glorified masseuse. They didn't see the anatomy exams, the board certifications, the continuing education units on neurology and orthopedics. They saw me in scrubs, sweating, and decided I was beneath them. Meanwhile, Caleb was building. First, it was a drop-shipping business, selling cheap watches. He burned through $10,000 of the insurance money on ads, sold 3 watches, and blamed the algorithm. Then it was crypto. He convinced Mom to liquidate a chunk of her IRA, promising 100x returns. That money vanished in a market crash, and Caleb claimed he was learning the lessons of the volatility. Now it was the Alpha Mindset podcast. He and his friend Trent sat in our dining room 3 times a week, broadcasting advice on wealth, masculinity, and success to an audience of mostly bots and angry teenagers. The irony, of course, was that Caleb had never paid a bill in his life. The suit jacket he wore for the video stream, I bought it for his birthday. The steak dinner he posted on Instagram with the caption, "Number Wards," I cooked it. The studio he sat in, my bonus from picking up holiday shifts paid for the soundproofing foam. But I stayed. I stayed because I promised my dad at the funeral that I would take care of Mom. I stayed because the housing market in Pittsburgh was brutal, and I had convinced myself that living rent-free, even if I paid for everything else, was a smart financial move. That was the lie I told myself. I'm living rent-free. The truth was, the house was in Mom's name. Dad had left everything to her, trusting she would look after us. But there was a secret about the house that only I knew. A secret that sat in the bottom drawer of the filing cabinet in the study. 5 years ago, just a year after Dad died, Caleb had gotten into legal trouble. He had been trying to start a high-end car rental business with no inventory, essentially brokering cars he didn't own. He got sued. Badly. Mom had panicked. She didn't tell me. Instead, she went to the bank and took out a home equity line of credit, HELOC. She drew $180,000 against the house to pay for Caleb's lawyers, the settlements, and to seed his next venture so he wouldn't be depressed. She had told me at the time that Dad had a small life insurance policy I didn't know about. That was a lie. It was dead. For 5 years, the bank statements for the HELOC came to the house, and for 5 years I opened them, saw the minimum interest-only payment of roughly $900, and paid it along with the mortgage. I never mentioned it. I just assumed they knew. It was their debt, after all. But because I handled the bills, they had developed a magical amnesia. They forgot the debt existed because they never felt the pain of paying it. In their minds, that $180,000 had been free money from the universe. They believed the house was paid off, a fortress of equity that proved their status. They didn't know that if I missed 2 payments, the bank would begin foreclosure proceedings. They were tenants in a house of cards, and I was the only one holding the glue. The night of the podcast, something shifted. It wasn't just anger. Anger is hot. It burns out. This was cold. It was the absolute clarity of seeing yourself through the eyes of the people you love, and realizing they don't see a person. They see a resource. I went into my bedroom, the smallest one, the old guest room, because Caleb needed the master suite for his office space, and sat on the edge of the bed. I didn't cry. I pulled out my laptop. I had a secret of my own, a boring, bureaucratic secret. 2 years ago, I had realized the joint account with Mom was a black hole. No matter how much I put in, it drained out. So, I had started skimming my own paycheck. I told Mom and Caleb that my hours had been cut at the clinic. I told them the insurance reimbursement rates had dropped, lowering my pay. It was a lie. In fact, I had been promoted to a senior PTA role and had started taking private contract clients on weekends, wealthy athletes in the suburbs who needed rehab at home and paid in cash. I opened my personal secret bank account. Balance, $48,450. It wasn't enough to buy a house outright, but it was enough to leave. I had been saving it for a someday. Maybe a wedding, if I ever had time to date. Maybe a down payment in 5 years. I looked at the number. Then I looked at the wall adjoining the dining room, where Caleb's voice was still booming. You can't feel bad about outgrowing people. He was shouting now, ramping up for his sign-off. If you're an eagle, you can't feel guilty about leaving the pigeons on the ground. It's nature. Okay, I whispered to the empty room. You're right. The next morning, the house was quiet. Caleb slept until noon, and Mom usually stayed in bed until her stories came on at 11. I made coffee in the French press I had bought, poured it into the travel mug I had bought, and looked around the kitchen I kept clean. There was a note on the counter from Mom. Elena, need $200 cash for nails and lunch with Cheryl. Leave it on the table. Love, Mom. I stared at the note. In the past, I would have sighed, gone to the ATM, and left the cash. I would have told myself it was easier than fighting. I would have told myself she's grieving. She's fragile. Instead, I took a pen and wrote on the bottom of the note, no cash today. Budget tight. Then I left for work. My phone started blowing up around 1 p.m. Mom, what do you mean budget tight? I promised Cheryl. Mom, Elena, answer me. This is embarrassing. Caleb, Mom's crying. What is your problem? Just Venmo her. Caleb, stop being petty. We have a guest coming over tonight for the pot, and the vibe is ruined. I archived the thread and went back to my patient, a 70-year-old retired steelworker recovering from a knee replacement. He was grimacing as he tried to bend his leg. Hurts like hell, doesn't it? I asked him softly. Yeah, he grunted, sweat on his forehead. But if I don't move it, it freezes up, right? Exactly, I said, gently guiding his heel. You have to push through the pain to get the function back. If you stay comfortable, you never walk away. I realized I wasn't just talking to him. When I got home that evening, the atmosphere was poisonous. Mom was sitting at the kitchen table, nursing a cup of tea with the lights off, performing deep depression. Caleb was leaning against the counter, scrolling on his phone. Finally, Caleb said, not looking up, do you know how stressed she's been? Her blood pressure is probably through the roof. Hello to you too, I said, putting my bag down. I worked a 12-hour shift. How was your day? Don't start with the martyr act, Caleb snapped. Mom needed a simple thing. You know she gets anxious when she doesn't have cash on hand. It's about security, Elena. I didn't have it, I said calmly, opening the fridge. It was empty, of course. They hadn't shopped. Money is tight. Inflation, you know. You work all the time, Mom said, her voice trembling. Where does it go? You don't have expenses. You live here. You live here. The phrase hung in the air. I paid the mortgage, Mom, I said, keeping my back to them as I reached for a water bottle. And the electric. And the gas. And the internet. Caleb is using right now. That's contribution. Caleb slammed his hand on the counter. That's what families do. You contribute to the household. I contribute to the management and the vision. Mom contributes the home itself. It's her house. It is my house, Mom agreed, sitting up straighter. And I don't appreciate being made to beg in my own kitchen by my own daughter. I turned around slowly. This was the moment. The script was playing out exactly as it always did. They pushed, I folded. Peace was restored. You're right, I said. It is your house. They relaxed. They thought I was apologizing. I'm sorry I upset you, I continued. I'm just tired. I'll make dinner. Caleb rolled his eyes but looked satisfied. Steak again? I need protein. I'm hitting the gym hard tomorrow. Sure, I said. Steak. I didn't make steak. I made pasta with jarred sauce because that's all we had in the pantry. They ate it with complaints. Too many carbs, taste cheap, but they ate it. I washed the dishes. I wiped the counters. Then, around 9 p.m., while Caleb was setting up for a late-night strategy session stream, and Mom was watching The Bachelor, I sat in the living room with my laptop. Hey, I said, since we're talking about finances, I wanted to show you guys something I've been working on. A budget spreadsheet. Caleb groaned from the dining room doorway. Elena, I'm in flow state. Can this wait? It'll take 5 minutes. I just want to make sure I can keep supporting the vision. That got him. Flattery was the key to the lock. He walked in, crossing his arms. Mom paused the TV, looking annoyed. Fine, Caleb said. Show us the math, but make it quick. I didn't show them a budget. I had pulled up Zillow. I was looking at the market, I said innocently, and I noticed something interesting. The house 2 doors down, the Miller place, it just sold for $450,000. Mom's eyes widened. That much? For that dump? The market is hot, I said. And it got me thinking. This house is way too big for Mom to manage. The stairs are bad for her knees. The utility bills are huge. I manage fine. Mom sniffed. But imagine, I said, watching Caleb's face, if you sold this place, you'd walk away with, after the remaining mortgage is paid, maybe $300,000 cash? Clean. I saw the gear turn in Caleb's head. It was visceral. His pupils actually dilated. $300K, he murmured. Mom could get a little condo, I said. No stairs, maintenance included. And there would be plenty left over. Plenty left over for investment. Caleb finished the thought. He looked at Mom, a hungry shine in his eyes. Mom, she's actually making sense for once. Think about it. We're sitting on dead equity. If we liquidated, I could finally launch the crypto arbitrage platform properly. We could 10x that money in a year. Mom looked at Caleb, then at the house. Well, I have always hated those stairs. And Elena? Caleb turned to me, his voice taking on that smooth, predatory tone. What about you? You'd move with Mom, right? To the condo? This was the test. Actually, I said, keeping my voice level, I was thinking it's time I moved out. Got my own place, let you guys have your space. The room went dead silent. What? Mom asked sharply. If you sell, I said, I'd move out. I'm 26. It's time. But, Mom looked panicked. 6. It's time. But, Mom looked panicked. Who would? The condo fees. The groceries. I can't live on just Social Security, Elena. You know that. Caleb would have the investment money, I said, gesturing to him. He's the wealth architect. With $300,000 of capital, surely he can cover your living expenses. He says it all the time on the show. Assets versus liabilities. I watched the trap snap shut. Caleb was stuck. If he admitted he couldn't support her, He was admitting he was a fraud in front of his investor, Mom. If he agreed, he was taking on a financial burden he had no ability to carry. But his ego was the pilot. It always was. Of course I can, Caleb scoffed, puffing out his chest. If we have the capital, I can easily generate enough monthly yield to cover Mom's lifestyle, better than you can with your wages. See, I smiled. It was the first genuine smile I had felt in years. Problem solved. You sell the house, Caleb manages the fortune, Mom lives like a queen, and I get out of your hair so I'm not a drag on the vision. Mom looked between us. She wanted the money. She wanted the validation of her golden son, and she wanted to believe I was unnecessary. Well, Mom said slowly, maybe we should call a realtor, just to see. Great idea, I said. I'll sleep on the couch tonight so you guys can discuss the details. I don't want to intrude on the business meeting. I walked back to my room, heart hammering against my ribs. They didn't know I knew about the podcast comments. They thought I was just being a helpful, submissive sister offering them a golden ticket. They didn't realize I had just handed them a shovel and suggested they dig a hole. Because here was the thing they forgot. I paid the mortgage. I paid the taxes. I handled the paperwork. And I knew something about the house that they didn't. They were operating on the math of the sale price minus the mortgage. They had completely forgotten the HELOC. They had forgotten the $180,000 of debt Mom had signed for and Caleb had spent years ago. When they sold the house, the bank would take everything. The next few weeks were a blur of quiet fury. I played the role of the dutiful ghost perfectly. While they argued about listing prices and staged the living room with rented furniture, I was silently extracting myself from the mainframe of their lives. I found an apartment. It wasn't luxury. It was a second-floor walk-up in a neighborhood Caleb would call mid, but it had exposed brick and a landlord who actually fixed things. I signed the lease during my lunch break. I started moving my things out slowly, $1 at a time. I took my winter clothes first, then my books, then the kitchen appliances I had bought, the blender, the good knives, the air fryer. Where is the air fryer? Caleb asked one Tuesday, rummaging through the cabinets. It broke. I lied. I threw it out. Great, he muttered. Now I have to eat cold leftovers. Sorry, I said. Maybe you can buy a new one with the equity check. He just grunted. He was too high on the prospect of the money to notice that the house was emptying out. The real challenge was the bills. I had to time it perfectly. I couldn't stop paying too early, or the lights would go out before they sold the house, and the chaos would derail the plan. I needed the sale to go through. I needed them to sign the papers. The closing date was set for November 15th. On November 1st, I sat down at my computer. I opened the utility accounts. Electric, gas, water, internet. One by one, I clicked transfer service or cancel service, CN's end date for November 14th. Then I went to the joint bank account. I transferred my direct deposit to my new secret account. I left exactly $100 in the joint account. Enough to keep it open, but not enough to pay a single bill. I felt a wave of nausea as I did it. It felt like cutting an umbilical cord with a rusty knife. For 6 years, my identity had been the provider. I was the one who made sure they were safe. By clicking cancel, I was violating the promise I made to my dad. But then I remembered the podcast. Fuel. I remembered the years of snide comments about my scrubs. Why don't you dress nicer? Why do you smell like antiseptic? I remembered the time I came home with a promotion and a $2 raise, and Mom's only reaction was, good. Maybe we can upgrade the cable package. I clicked confirm. The day I left for good was anticlimactic. They were out. Mom was at the hairdresser, getting ready for the big closing celebration. Caleb was at a co-working space, networking with potential investors for his non-existent fund. I hired movers for the big stuff, my bed, my dresser. They were fast. In 2 hours, my room was bare. I did one last sweep. I looked at the spot on the rug where Dad used to play with us. I looked at the kitchen table where I had learned to balance a checkbook. I left my key on the counter. Next to it, I left a folder. Inside the folder were the final bills I wasn't going to pay, and underneath them, a printout of the HELAC statement they had ignored for 5 years with the payoff amount highlighted in neon yellow. I didn't write a note. I didn't need to. I walked out to my car, got in, and drove to my new apartment. I didn't listen to music. I just listened to the tires on the pavement. I spent that first night sitting on the floor of my new living room, eating Thai food out of a carton. It was silent. No TV. No ranting about the Matrix. No complaints about my cooking. I slept for 12 hours. I woke up to my phone vibrating off the nightstand. It was Mom, then Caleb, then Mom again. 14 missed calls. I didn't answer. I went to work. I treated my patients. I smiled. I felt lighter, like gravity had suddenly released its hold on my ankles. At lunch, I checked my voicemail. Elena. Mom's voice was frantic, high-pitched. That internet is off. The power company sent a text saying the final bill is due. What is going on? Where are you? Then a message from Caleb. You think this is funny? Ghosting us right before the sale? You better transfer the money for the utilities right now. I have a stream tonight. If the internet isn't back up in an hour, I'm going to lose it. I sat in the break room, sipping my coffee. I could feel the old panic rising, the conditioned reflex to fix it, to soothe them, to pay the money just to make the yelling stop. No, I told myself, you are a liability. Liabilities don't pay bills. I texted back one sentence to the group chat. I moved out. The bills are in your name now. Good luck with the sale. Then I blocked them for the rest of the shift. I thought that was the end of it. I thought they would sell the house, realize the money was gone, and hate me from a distance. I was wrong, because 3 days later, Caleb decided to take the fight to the only arena he understood, the internet. I was at home, unpacking books, when a friend from nursing school texted me. Hey, are you okay? I just saw the video. My stomach dropped. What video? She sent a link. It was a TikTok. It was Caleb. He was sitting in his car, because the power was apparently out in the house filming himself in the dark. He looked disheveled, angry, and practiced. Story time, he said to the camera. Imagine trusting your own family. Imagine letting your sister handle the finances because you wanted to help her feel useful. And then imagine finding out she was embezzling the money the whole time. My sister, the nurse, just walked out on my elderly mother, left her with no power, no heat, and stole the utility money. We are sitting in the dark because of her greed. This is what evil looks like, guys. Watch out for the quiet ones. The caption read, My sister left my mom to freeze. Narcissist, family betrayal, nar exposed. It had 40,000 views. I stared at the screen. The comments were rolling in. What a monster. Drop her name. Call the licensing board. She shouldn't be around patients. This is elder abuse. I felt the blood drain from my face. He wasn't just venting. He was lying. And he was coming for my career. I sat there, paralyzed. This was the nightmare. This was why I had stayed quiet for so long. The fear of his weaponized victimhood. But then, I looked at the folder on my desk. The folder I had taken with me. The one labeled Receipts. It had everything. The bank statements showing 5 years of my transfers. The HELAC documents with Mom's signature. The invoices for his equipment that I paid for. The text messages where he called me the help. I looked at the video again. Caleb was smirking slightly at the end, a tiny micro-expression of satisfaction. He thought he had won. He thought that because I was the quiet one, I would stay quiet. He forgot one thing. I wasn't just a sister. I was an auditor of their lives. And I had kept every single piece of paper. I opened my laptop. I didn't open TikTok. I opened a fresh Word document. I wasn't going to make a reaction video. I wasn't going to make a reaction video. I wasn't going to cry on camera. I was going to publish the lecture. Here is part 2 of the story. Title: The Architect of Their Own Ruin, Part 2. Narrator Elena. Word count 2,480 words. The instinct to defend yourself is primal, but when you work in healthcare, it's also professional survival. Caleb wasn't just hurting my feelings by accusing me of elder abuse and embezzlement on a public platform. He was lighting a match next to my state license. I didn't sleep that night. I didn't cry. I sat at my new oak desk, the one I bought for myself, the first piece of furniture I truly loved, and I organized. Caleb's TikTok was gaining traction. It had jumped to 80,000 views. The comments were turning into a mob. Doxa, one user wrote. Find out where she works. I knew I had about 24 hours before someone found my LinkedIn profile and started harassing my clinic. I opened a Google Drive folder. I named it The Vance Family Financial Ledger 2018-2024. I started uploading. Exhibit A, the transfer history. A PDF of my bank statements from the last 6 years, with every transfer to the joint household account highlighted. Total, $148,320. Exhibit B, the Alpha expenses. A spreadsheet detailing every purchase I made for Caleb. The microphone he was speaking into, $400, paid by Elena. The soundproofing foam, $1,200, paid by Elena. The suit he wore in his profile picture, $250, paid by Elena. Exhibit C, the HELOC. This was the kill shot. I scanned the document my mother had signed 5 years ago, the one securing $180,000 against the house. Next to it, I uploaded the monthly statements showing me paying the interest, while Caleb spent the principal on business ventures that never materialized. Exhibit D, the eviction. I uploaded a screenshot of my text messages from 2 months prior, where I explicitly told them, I am moving out in November. You need to budget for the utilities. I included Caleb's reply, whatever, we don't need your pennies. Go be a loser somewhere else. I didn't write a long emotional caption. I didn't talk about my feelings or my childhood trauma. I wrote a single paragraph at the top of the document. My name is Elena Vance. I am a licensed physical therapist assistant. Yesterday, allegations were made regarding my conduct and my treatment of my mother. I believe in data, not drama. Below is the complete financial history of my contributions to the household over the last 6 years, totaling nearly $150,000, along with proof of the debts incurred by my accuser. I did not abandon my family. I simply stopped funding their lifestyle. I sent the link to my boss at the clinic first, with a subject line, heads up regarding potential harassment. Then, I created a burner Twitter account. I found Caleb's video, which had been reposted to X, formerly Twitter, by a drama aggregator account. I replied with the link. Then I closed my laptop, turned off my phone, and went for a run. The internet is a volatile beast. It loves a victim, but it loves a receipt drop even more. When I turned my phone back on 4 hours later, the tide hadn't just turned. It had evaporated the ocean. People had gone through the Google Drive. They had done the math. They saw the dates. Wait, one top comment read. He's calling her a thief, but she paid for his podcast mic? This dude is a clown. Look at the HELOC docs, another amateur sleuth pointed out. The mom took out $180K for his business, and he blew it, and the sister was paying the interest. She's a saint. I would have burned the house down. Alpha fail. Started trending in a small circle of the internet. Caleb tried to delete the video, but the internet is forever. Someone had already duetted it with my spreadsheets as the background. He went private. Then he went public again to post a rant about forged documents, which only made it worse because the documents clearly had bank watermarks. I never responded to a single comment. I never did an interview. I let the silence do the heavy lifting. But the real fallout wasn't digital. It was financial. And it was imminent. The closing on the house was scheduled for November 15th. I knew exactly what was going to happen, but I wasn't there to see it. I heard about it later from a neighbor, Mrs. Gable, who texted me the gossip. Apparently, Caleb and Mom walked into the title company feeling triumphant. They were expecting the check for roughly $300,000. They had already been looking at luxury condos. Caleb had told his few remaining loyal followers that he was liquidating assets to pivot into high-yield real estate. They sat down. The title officer pushed the papers across the table. The sale price was $440,000. Minus the original mortgage balance, $210,000. Minus realtor fees and closing costs, $26,000. Minus the HELOC payoff, $184,000. Interest had accrued. The net proceeds check was for $20,000. Mrs. Gable told me that the screaming could be heard from the parking lot. Caleb accused the title officer of fraud. Mom fainted. Actually fainted. And they had to call paramedics. They were escorted out of the building by security. $20,000. That was what was left of the empire. It wasn't enough to buy a condo. It wasn't enough to invest. It was barely enough to cover a year of rent in a mediocre apartment and move their things into storage. The texts started coming that evening. Mom, how could you do this? You knew. You knew about the loan and you let us sell. We are ruined. Caleb, you set us up. You withheld information. I'm speaking to a lawyer. This is entrapment. I looked at the messages. I felt a flicker of the old guilt, the conditioned response to fix their pain. It would be so easy to transfer them $5,000, just to help them settle, just to stop the panic. But then I looked around my apartment. I looked at the quiet, clean space. I listened to the hum of my refrigerator, which was full of food I had bought with my own money. I typed one response to both of them. I didn't sign the loan. I didn't sign the money. And I am not the one who decided to sell the house. I am no longer the manager of this family. I am just a relative. Then I changed my phone number. The winter passed in a blur of peace. It's strange how much capacity you have when you aren't carrying two other adults on your back. I was promoted at work to lead PTA. I started dating a guy named Mark, a carpenter who made bad jokes and had a golden retriever. Mark was the first man I ever brought home who didn't look at me with pity when I talked about my family, mostly because I didn't talk about them. You don't mention your parents much, he said one night, while we were cooking dinner. My dad died a long time ago, I said, chopping peppers. And my mother and brother, they're on a different path. We aren't close. That's healthy, he said, and he meant it. Boundaries are good. I was happy. Actually, genuinely happy. But the thing about parasites is that they don't just die when the host detaches. They look for a new way in. In March, 4 months after the sale, I got a letter at my work address. It was from a law firm. My heart hammered against my ribs as I opened it in the break room. I thought Caleb had actually found a lawyer to sue me. It wasn't a lawsuit. It was a notification of bankruptcy proceedings. In the matter of Sarah Vance, they were filing for Chapter 7. The $20,000 was gone. Burned, I assumed, on a desperate attempt to maintain their lifestyle. Or maybe Caleb had invested it in one last sure thing. The letter listed me as a party of interest, because my name had been on the joint account previously. I called the trustee listed on the paper. I explained that I had removed myself from the account months prior and had no financial ties to the debtor. Understood, the trustee said, his voice bored. We see the transfer history. You're clear, Ms. Vance. It looks like a standard case of mismanagement. The son is listed as a dependent? He's 29, I said. Right, the trustee sighed. We see a lot of that. I hung up. Bankruptcy. My mother, who used to pride herself on a credit score, who used to lecture me about coupon clipping, was bankrupt. I felt a profound sadness. Not for the money, but for the waste of it all. They had a paid-off house, mostly. They had stability. They had a daughter who was willing to work herself to the bone to keep them comfortable. And they threw it all away because they couldn't stand the idea of me having a little bit of dignity. I didn't reach out. I filed a letter in my receipts folder and went back to work. 2 weeks later, I saw them. I was at the grocery store, the cheap one on the edge of town, picking up bulk rice for a meal prep. I turned the aisle, and there they were. Mom looked 10 years older. Her hair, usually dyed a perfect chestnut, was gray at the roots. She was wearing a coat I didn't recognize, something ill-fitting, likely from a thrift store. Caleb was pushing the cart. He wasn't wearing a suit. He was wearing sweatpants and a hoodie with a stain on the front. He looked bloated, angry, and small. They were arguing over a box of generic cereal. "It's too much sugar, Mom," Caleb was snapping. "Get the oats. It's cheaper per ounce." "I hate oats," Mom whined. "I just want something nice." "We don't have money for nice, okay? Put it back." I froze. I was wearing my scrubs, my badge still clipped to my chest. I looked professional, healthy, put together. I could have turned around. I could have walked away. But Mom looked up and saw me. Her eyes went wide. For a second, I saw hope flare in them. That reflexive, maternal look that said, "Oh good, the fixer is here." "Elena," she breathed. Caleb whipped around. His eyes narrowed. He looked me up and down, taking in my clean clothes, my posture, the expensive brand of coffee in my basket. "Well," Caleb sneered, "look who it is, the traitor." "Hello, Mom." "Hello, Caleb," I said. My voice was steady. "Are you happy?" Mom asked, stepping toward me. "Look at us, Elena. Look at what you did." "I didn't do this," I said softly. "You left us," she cried, causing a woman in the next aisle to look over. "You left me with him. You knew he couldn't handle the bills. You knew he wasn't practical like you." It was the first time she had ever admitted it. He wasn't practical. He wasn't the genius. He was incompetent. "You chose him, Mom," I said. "You chose the vision. This is the vision." "We're living in a basement apartment," she sobbed. "It smells like mold. My back hurts. I can't afford my bridge club. Elena, please. You must have room. Just for me. I can sleep on your couch." Caleb watched me. His arms crossed. He wasn't asking. He was waiting to see if the guilt button still worked. "I can't do that," I said. "Why?" she pleaded. "I'm your mother." "Because," I said, looking at Caleb, "if I let you in, I let the pattern back in, and I've worked too hard to break it." "You're selfish," Caleb barked. "You think you're better than us?" "No," I said. "I just think I'm done." I gripped the handle of my basket. "I hope things get better for you. I really do. There are programs, Mom. The senior center has resources. You should call them." "I don't want a program," she screamed. "I want my daughter." "You had a daughter," I said. "You treated her like an employee. And she quit." I walked past them. I didn't run. I walked at a normal pace to the checkout. I paid for my groceries. I walked to my car. I sat in the driver's seat and watched them exit the store a few minutes later. They were walking to the bus stop. It broke my heart. It shattered it. I cried the whole way home. But I didn't turn the car around. That was 6 months ago. I still hear things occasionally. Small towns talk. I heard Caleb is working at a warehouse now, driving a forklift. It's honest work. Probably the first honest work he's ever done. I heard Mom is volunteering at the library, mostly to get out of the apartment. They haven't tried to contact me since the grocery store. I think they finally realized that the Bank of Elena is closed permanently. I'm sitting on my balcony now, writing this. The sun is setting over the park. Mark is inside making pasta. My life is quiet. It's boring, actually. And it's wonderful. There's a misconception about boundaries. People think they are walls you build to punish others. But they aren't. They are the perimeter you set to protect the garden you're trying to grow. For years, I let my family trample my soil. I let them eat the fruit before it was ripe. I let them convince me that my only purpose was to feed them. even as they mock the hands that serve them. I know there are people out there who will say I was too harsh, that you don't turn your back on family, no matter what, that I should have saved them from their own incompetence. But here is the truth I learned in the silence of my empty apartment. You cannot save people who are addicted to their own drowning. If you jump in, they won't swim to shore. They will just climb on top of you to breathe, and you will both sink. I didn't sink. I swam. And for the first time in 26 years, I am not just keeping my head above water. I am actually enjoying the view. If you have ever been the one expected to fix everything, if you have ever been called limited by the people whose lives you subsidize, I hope you know that walking away isn't failure. It's the only way to find out who you are when you aren't carrying the weight of the world. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is hand the people you love their own consequences and let them finally, truly, grow up.